Hello, friends. This is the AlphaList podcast. I am your host, Toby. The goal of the AlphaList podcast is to empower CTOs with the info and insight they need to make the best decisions for their company. We do this by hosting top thought leaders and picking their brains for insights into technical leadership and tech trends. If you believe in the power of accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth, make sure to subscribe to this podcast. Plus, if you're an experienced CTO, you will love the discussion happening in our Slack space where over 600 CTOs are sharing insights, or visit one of our events. Just go to alphalist.com to apply. Welcome to the AlphaList podcast. I'm your host, Toby. And today I'm super proud and honored to welcome Peter Gostev. And Peter Gostev is the head of AI at Moonpig. And the ones who don't know Moonpig, it's a company that sells gift cards, right? Or cards, like greeting
cards and gifts, yeah.
It is worth like over 300 million pounds, as far as I know. So it's a British company. Is it?
Yeah. It's more now. Yeah, it's about.
It's even more now.
Yeah, no, we're doing quite well. Yeah,
you're doing quite well, and you have a bit of an unusual role, which is like new in many companies, and many companies are thinking about like centralizing AI, and I really love talking about it. I mean, I always have to be careful, like not to mix in too much AI, because like many people also tend to be annoyed by the AI hype right now. But I think your role is quite uncommon still, I'm also at SaaS Group. My company just. I've just hired a head of AI, or I've just hired. That sounds so top down. No, we just hired a head of AI, and I'm super pumped to explore this. And it's really, I can imagine, like a super explorative job. Beforehand, you already did AI strategy at NatWest Group, and like beforehand, like diverse strategy and analytics gigs. You studied at Harvard Business School, right? And yeah, you're a regular guest on many AI podcasts. And you have a big reach on LinkedIn as well, like 60K followers. So that's super exciting. And you're posting a lot of like hype firing things, but also like sometimes you clarify things that what I really, really like and enjoy. So thanks for being my guest here.
No, thanks for inviting me. Excited to be here.
I'd love to talk about your perspective on AI in general, and where we're heading, but also like how to really change cultural aspects in modern companies, and also as a learning for CTOs explicitly, how you feel about like how to influence the process and where we should all head. That would be like really as a takeaway value for me, really super important. But maybe before we start with that, like let's go a bit deeper on your nerd journey. Like basically, we start with the first memory of a computer that really hooked you.
Mm-hmm. So My first computer at home was Pentium 2, I remember. And the good thing about that was that our parents, so it was me and my brother playing with it, and our parents had no idea what was going on. And I feel like that was golden age for me. And that was like a sweet spot, that it was not too complicated. So it was not for really, really technical people. So you could still make it work. And if you want to play some computer games, or if you've got some dodgy CG from back of a market that you want to try and get going, it doesn't work. That was really good learning to just good motivation to start learning how computers worked. So, and I do wonder if younger people now, if they start with an iPhone and a Mac and it works super well, and you just I know, swipe and click buttons, whether you're actually not motivated to learn like a bit more depth in terms of how computers work. So yeah, I feel like that at least gave me some good grounding in that motivation to play computer games when you're 10 years old. I think is a good grounding for anyone starting in technology.
So your gateway drug clearly was video games. But what was like, was there any moment when you like shifted towards like, this is what I want to work with. This is what, like how I can influence the machine doing more than just, I don't know, shooting or whatever in games. Like,
yeah, I would say there was never like one specific point. And I remember when I was working on early projects in consulting or in banking, you can kind of see that pretty much every single exciting project that I ever did was something to do with data and machine learning, and it kind of went up that intelligence curve, where it started off with, I don't know, maybe basic analytics, and then when I was at NatWest in the data science team there, we were doing some really interesting cool stuff, and towards my time, the end of my time there, it was generative AI wave was coming up, and that was kind of pushed me towards here. But I would say over time, it really appealed to me, that idea of how much we can do with data, with machine learning, and now with generative AI. And I think there's never really been more exciting time in my career versus now. And every time we can just do more and more and more, which is just such a cool position to be in.
So now is always the most exciting time, I guess, then, right? Like at least if you are in AI, then like it's really now and here and now, right? What's your perspective on, like, let's say the hype cycle and where we stand, and how it will look like in a year or so?
Yeah, it's very, like, whenever I think about where we are with hype, it's a very kind of mixed picture. There are some things that really frustrate me, where people just hype things up that are maybe like useful, but not actually like that important in particular, or we are way too early, or there's a lot of complexity that they still need to get through. But on the other hand, I also feel like people really are underestimating where we are, or how much more there is to go. And what gives me really reason to say this is that if you look at the amount of investments that are going in terms of GPUs, and all of these big clusters, we are really just at the beginning of these investments starting to come through. All of the most important models so far have really been trained kind of on older technologies. So, for example, H100 GPUs were really the workhorse of all of the current models. So like the biggest cluster is Grok has been trained on. This is just H100 GPUs, O3 model, H100 GPUs. This is a model that this is the GPU that came out before ChatGPT. So I think it was something like summer 2022. So clearly they haven't even they couldn't have possibly designed it specifically for LLMs in mind. So, and the amount of compute that we're getting soon, in the next year, even within this year and beyond that, is just kind of mind-boggling. It's just going to multiply several times. And this is not speculation in the sense that, I don't know, maybe things will happen. No, they have paid money for this. This is already NVIDIA recorded the revenue. Is these data centers are being built. Like, this is happening. And it's hard to predict, like, maybe things will flop and, GPT-5 is nothing bigger, and I don't know, Grok 4, which should come out soon, is also not interesting. Like, it's possible. But it's also, I think, quite likely that we'll even just because of the amount of compute we're going to get, we're actually underestimating how much more there is to come. So that kind of gives me pause in this duality of the hype cycle. I think some people overhype some maybe not important stuff, but maybe also don't realize how much more there is still to come.
Do you have an example for like stuff that is not as important, but people overhype it?
Yeah, I think maybe it is important, but for example, the whole agentic wave right now, I think people really underestimate how difficult it would be how difficult it would be to build a fully agentic system. Right now, we're looking at some projects internally for us, which we're still working on, and we're looking at what would it take for us to build a more broader agentic system that will do whole spectrum of tasks, and essentially we would end up probably quadrupling or more the size of the project, just because of the number of integrations we need to build, the number of controls we need to build, all of the different blockers that we'll have, and so on. So I think whenever you see some big claims about agents going to do everything and we're going to automate all of the work, once you actually start doing it and planning the project, you just realize I could build it, but it will take me a year or 2 years, and probably it will be completely out of date in terms of the technology that we're using by that time.
And sometimes it's also not worth it, because what you're getting from the agent really is like, I don't know how often you have to execute it. Like depends on the amount of executions and the time you spend doing it manually. You realize, okay, what I want to automate here is like really like not that important or not that much, so that you better sometimes end up not automating it, because like maintaining automation and agents, like even if it's just like a few prompts that you basically have to script ultimately and connect, like maintaining this is also some work, right?
Yeah, and I think the definitions of agents really vary a lot by different people. So for me, we've built a bunch of workflows that we have automated, where you kind of stitch prompts together and have various data floats. I would not define this as an agent, because it's quite precisely defined in terms of what happens when. So for me, they're just kind of automated workflow, which definitely, I think that's a good use case. Yeah, for you're right. In some cases, it's still not worth it, because if you do it once a week, it doesn't really matter. But for some processes, that will be quite valuable. And we've definitely had some processes inside Moonpig that we've automated completely, so the humans don't touch them. But there are not that many of them that we could just pick up and automate. And then once you go in that more fully agentic sphere, where you really give much more control and give the agent ability to make judgments and all of that, then the number of potential use cases really broadens. Your ability to actually build it well really goes down, and the reliability is not as high, and the amount of software and integrations and all of that you need to build is actually really high. So that's the complexity. And I think there will be a tipping point when actually maybe it's the connections are there, maybe the models are way smarter, so you don't need to babysit them at every single step. Then it might just work, and then maybe all of the hype that we see now with agents becomes real. But as of today, I think it's really hard to build good full agents. And I think Andrej Karpathy, I watched a talk by him recently, and he said he had a similar point of view, having worked in autonomous driving, and how long that took to get from that kind of working demos to actual deployment. That took over a decade. And he was saying we should see it as a decade of agents, which I think is much closer to reality.
Yeah, I tend to, like, for me, it like is like constantly up and down, like how my perception of how much I can, or how much, for example, software can be replaced or like rewritten or like auto-written by agents. Like it constantly changes. And like if I do something bigger, then at a certain point I hit like a disappointing moment and stop doing it. I also don't have to do it in my daily work. But recently I, for example, started using Claude, or like the command line interface code. And I must say that like it's really it really moved far from my perspective, and it really is at a very good point where I don't know, I think like teaching your juniors how to use it, teaching like everyone how to use it, kind of makes sense from my perspective, even though you won't use it every day and you don't, like, you maybe also hit a wall at a certain point. What's your perspective on that? Like explicitly with that software engineering perspective.
Yeah, that's something that is actually really tricky, because the way and I agree with your observation as well. I have a similar experience where when I try things and sometimes they work, then I get tired of it and maybe don't use it for a bit. And the tricky thing here is that it's a skill in itself to use these tools, and what you need to pay attention to, what your workflow is quite different to regular software engineering. So what is tricky is to get an organization. We've got, I think, some like 150 software engineers. It's really hard to basically tell them, actually stop doing what you're doing, how you're doing it, and actually do it this way. Because I can't really even describe what this way means necessarily, because people work on front end, back end, with different languages, with different circumstances. So for me to really help them do that well, I have to be super engineer myself, and I'm not, and I doubt many people like can be in a position to really explain to everyone. So I think this is a big blocker, that because it requires the change of flow and workflow of how people actually build and how they interact with these systems, it makes a lot harder for people to adopt these tools. And like you said, with Cloud Code, like, it is very good, but it's also not really how people build software, right? I think it's quite uncommon for people to be like, yeah, let's just go into terminal and just gonna build like that.
And type in something.
Yeah. So that's really uncommon. So, but then the challenge is that I can change the strategy of the organization of how we build software and say, actually, everyone should be using Cloud Code, and that's how you do it. And I write a perfect guide and we train everyone. Then, I don't know, Cursor releases something else, or OpenAI releases something else.
Yeah, in a week, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I was also excited by Cursor like 4 weeks ago.
Yeah. So this is really tricky. And I think this is a problem that there's not any foolproof way how we just adopt this technology. And even, what tools do we use? What do we teach people? And I think right now there's just a massive gulf between those who really take time to adopt the technology and those who don't. And those who do, they develop the intuition for it, what's important, all those little tricks, different workflows. You change your setup, and it could be the way you write code and the way you document things and the way you just, set up the file structure, the way, even silly things like the way you name files, right? It might be obvious to you, but if the AI system cannot find the file because it's some generic name or like overlaps with many other files, like it will just be much worse. So even trivial examples like that, people who really take time to adopt these tools are way, way more productive and better at that. But it's not something I can just tell engineers, or it could be in other professions as well, just like, can you just do that? Because it's almost like a mindset and the skill and something you just have to keep working at. And it changes all the time. So it's, even if you learn it, you still need to relearn it probably a few months later.
It reminds me a bit, like I'm I don't know, developer at heart, and every once in a while I try to use a certain technology, and it reminds me a bit of the times when like all the new front-end technologies came out, and there were like many people really, or like a new tool every day that like people adopted and people were like basically shouting out for, and often like influenced by big tech. Hey, this is the new framework. This is like, I don't know, you now have to reuse React, or you now have to use Angular 2 or whatever. And that like then like almost like every few weeks there was like a new build tool and a new way to manage dependencies. And with AI, it's a bit similar. Like every time I open up my computer, I could try like 10 different new things, and also I can like build a lot of stuff in no time. How do you think, or is there, what's from your perspective? I want to change people's behavior. Then what's a good, or like, I don't know if I want people to change people's behavior, but how do you get in between? Like, I think the idea of Cloud Code, for example, is a good one, because many developers are on the command line, and really changing your real work behavior, like adopting a different editor, stuff like that, like with VS Code or Cursor as like a replacement then for VS Code. It's a big step, right? But just using the command line, to me, it felt super natural. Like I had a moment like recently, like I don't know, a few months back, when I thought like, hey, I use ZSH like a shell for macOS, and I wanted to have like something which is really AI powered and like close to ZSH, and that's, in a way, it's Claude, right? And that like is it maybe like a niche where like AI stepped in that is natural for a few developers. But yeah,
it's interesting. I think you might be right that maybe there is like a natural ergonomic like product market fit, because it seems to be really taking off. And I know there was some reported numbers for Anthropic revenue that they double the annual recurring revenue in like 6 months or something like that, or quadrupled it, some kind of crazy number. And that could be because of Cloud Code and just Sonnet 4 coming out. And I think it's actually also an important combination that I haven't used it too much myself, but Gemini also released there is a CLI tool, and some of the tests that I've seen were pretty terrible. And part of it was that it's probably just the model is not quite well aligned to it's not agentic enough to do well enough. So it looks like the model is playing a big part of it. But yeah, in terms of your point of adoption, I don't have a magic answer there, and I hope that showing people multiple ways how they can get value and maybe having some aha moments and just maximizing that could work. But it could also be naive that maybe they'll see it and it looks like a cool demo and they just go back to what they were doing. So I don't really know. So far, what I've seen is that people seem to just have mindset and personality type almost regardless of their job title, where they just pick these things up much better and they just use them better. And there is this kind of point that maybe it will go away, maybe things will just kind of get magically better and things will just work. But at this point in time, you do need to have intuition for how these models work, and what are the subtle things that you need to do. For example, one thing that just I'm so used to, so I even forget to mention this to people, that you need to, for example, if you're using ChatGPT, you need to start a new chat if you're trying to solve like a different problem. But the number of times that I get tripped up when I speak to people and I just have like, they have different conversations in the same chat. I'm like, why would you do that? Like, it clearly is the wrong way to do that. But to be honest, it's also not unreasonable, right? If you're going to speak, I don't know, to your friend, you're not like saying, okay, we're like stopping this conversation. Let's have this conversation.
Let's move to another one. Yeah. It's changed context.
Yeah. But I think just context management is just so natural for people. So, and that's one small example, but it just changes it completely. And I think for developers, it's similar. If they don't realize that they actually should start new chats and they should be careful, like what's in the context, they'll have completely different experience of using it. But yeah, they're just one small example, but there are just so many subtle things that you have to learn to use these tools well. That I also feel for people, because it's not people's job to to learn this necessarily. I mean, they probably should for their own good to invest time in this, but it's also kind of an unreasonable thing. Could you just like spend hours and hours learning random things?
You need an extra day, right? You need an extra day to do that. And then there are so many, let's say, blind or dead end roads here, where you discover after a while, okay, no, I use this SaaS tool now to do X, Y, Z. And I just realized it doesn't really help me. And just figuring that out is like a huge time investment and also money investment, right? Like you spend money on almost every tool you buy or start using, and then you stop using. So I think AI heavy companies in the SaaS world, people that provide tools for AI gold diggers, they see like huge churn, right? Like they see like it's far different pattern and behavior. Like people sign up, use it for a while, after 3 months discover that they still are paying $20 a month for this or that, and then they stop paying, or they realize, oh, I'm not using this or that anymore, and they stop paying. So really getting to like high adoption is super hard, especially because there's no silver bullet. How do you manage that in your day-to-day? Like, is that your responsibility also push like people to adopt AI in the company, or is it mostly like around like building AI related products, generating cards using AI, or like is that your thing as well?
Yeah. So for me, I split my work within Moonpig in 3 different categories. One is definitely tool adoption. So just making better use of what we've got already. So it could be things just like use ChatGPT better, and I don't know how we create custom GPTs or how we create this workflow. That's definitely a part of it. But also we've got a lot of creatives within our business. So extending, researching and understanding what's going on with image generation or video generation. That's also a big part of it. We've got big opportunities there. Then the second part are pretty sure things such as, for example, automating a workflow that we're pretty sure we know how to do. But just we need to actually do the work and do the engineering to do that. So that's the second part. And then the third one is more experimental, maybe harder things that quite often closer to the customer facing features and how we build them out. So the idea here is that I want to have a portfolio of different things that I'm covering, partially because just to make sure that we've got value delivered at all points. So there's not any, like, there's no value for 6 months. So let's just wait until something happens. So we don't want that. But part of it, we also don't want to be just, let's just adopt some tools and automate things here and there. We want to also have bigger projects that hopefully if they deliver, then they become quite big and impactful for the organization.
And are you like a lone wolf in the organization, or do you have an AI team around you, or like AI engineers that help on the product side, or how does it work?
Yeah, so the way we've set it up is that we've got 2 separate teams that could quite often in different organizations are combined. So we've got a data science team that is separate. They still train machine learning models, and there's quite a lot of work there to do on like recommendations and search and things like that. And then there's the second part, which is my team, which is the more applied AI engineering. And I've got several engineers there. And quite often their background would typically be software engineers. And that's also the difference with the data science team, who are typically data science, machine learning people, and then they would kind of extend their capabilities. For my team, it's typically software engineers who learned how to do AI. And the reason for that is that quite often on any given project, most of the work is actually non-AI work. When we want to implement a new customer-facing feature or automate some workflow or, I know, create some kind of agent or something like that, actually most of it is integration, scaffolding, deployment, UI, all of the things like that. And then the the AI part of it is normally maybe 10-20% of the actual work. But doesn't mean to say it's easy and kind of could be ignored. And we quite often actually start our projects by doing prototypes that we make sure that AI part actually works before we embark on any other harder software engineering tasks. And then once we're happy and we've got stakeholders who are interested and engaged, then we can move on and build the real thing.
So that means that you mostly build POCs and MVPs, small prototypes, and then hand it over to the business org. And you're basically approached by the business org typically, or like how does that look like? How does that flow?
It's actually a mixture. So we've always got projects that we're delivering ourselves directly. There's plenty of those that and the reason for that is sometimes there's not the capacity in that particular organization to build what we want to build, or there's quite often it's not just the capacity, but also like the right capacity. So maybe there is one person who could build it, but actually we couldn't get that time. So it's much better if we build it, and we kind of have to learn the particular domain. Or there are other cases when there's just no engineering at all, and actually in those areas. So, for example, most organizations would have no real engineering in something like customer service, although that's maybe more mixed, but finance, HR, commercial teams, maybe even marketing teams, they pretty much would not have any engineering support. But actually there are areas where these models can do really quite impactful work. So actually us partnering with them is quite often the only way to do it. There are other cases when we've got teams where we would mock something up together, like an early prototype, and then they're quite happy to get on with it and build it themselves. So I really like these kinds of projects because they're quite high leverage for me, that it could be a few days of work or maybe a few weeks of kind of calendar time, let's say, over a period of time where we work on some prototype, and then the team goes off and does it themselves. That's great, because that's something they want to do. It's not like us kind of forcing them to do some AI stuff. That's actually a real problem.
And that's what they will continue doing, right? I think that's the most important thing. Like, I mean, like teaching people like how to code with Claude or however you want to do it, right? Is one thing, but then the constant adoption and really like ideally also being able to get feedback every once in a while how adoption goes is important. How do you manage that? Like, do you have AI ambassadors in each part of the organization as well that like then like tell you every once in a while how things are going, or is it just like you and your team, and then like the events that you organize, and then the calendar time that you spend with people? Like how does that look like?
Yeah, so we are small enough that I think maybe we could have more formal structure with like ambassadors and things like that. For now, we still manage it through, we've got direct collaborations with several teams, and then which is more kind of a portfolio of work that we have and progress on directly. But also, if there are some extra projects we want to pick up on, then great, we can work on those together. I always try and say yes to people even if we can spend a bit of time to make some progress. And quite often I would say, especially the early POC part, quite often there is quite a lot of impact in just even doing the simplest, easiest thing. So we had one example where we had the use case where we just needed to like take in some data and process it and put it in another format. And originally the engineering team planned to do quite complicated projects where they would have like various structured rules about how they would process data, and that would have just taken weeks of work. And actually I just did a version where I made 2 LLM calls to just process the data and output it in a structured format. And that took me like one evening of work. And then next day I had a version of it ready, just a working prototype that they could test. And they just realized, actually, that is far simpler, and let us just do that. And then it ended up being not the whole engineering team for like 3 weeks for kind of semi-good solution. And it was one engineer for like a few days. And yeah, they just did that. So I think there's quite a lot of leverage in just showing the art of the possible. And quite often, and also maybe it's worth dwelling on kind of what I mean by prototypes. Sometimes we will build a piece of software, and it could be just me kind of vibe coding a piece of software just to kind of show how it could work together. But it could also be just a prompt in ChatGPT, where we'd just have custom GPT or just a prompt, or it could be a prompt on the playground, which would just show how that could be done. And quite often that's actually enough. We don't need to build some complex agents or anything like that. And that would be sufficient. And that could make a lot of difference to the team just realizing, actually, yeah, our roadmap was actually not the best, and let's just do it this way, and it's much simpler and will have more impact.
Yeah, I mean, the sole power of a custom GPT is already very impressive, right? Like just realizing that, like, how does it, like, why do you do it? Like, why would you build it? For what purpose? And then like constantly using it and enriching it, and then like creating like a few automations that maybe are fired by that. That's for me like an enormous time saver in so many situations. And it is, in a way, it is an agent, but yeah, very, very simple one, right?
Yeah. And I would say the magic there is when you can get a subject matter expert who, and it could be, I mean, it sounds dramatic, but it might literally be like, I know how I need to write my, Slack message, which is like a weekly update on a project. Like that could be the subject matter expert, is just a person who really knows what they need to do. That is really, really hard for someone outside of that who doesn't run this process to come in and tell them, oh, this is how you should do the Slack update or something. But if someone knows how to do that, and they could just work out how to use custom GPT or whatever they're using, then that could just unlock a lot of value. And yeah, I think there's a lot of power in getting these kinds of people really engaged, who are not necessarily technical people at all, and who just know what they need to do, and just showing them the way a little bit of that. Actually, it is possible. You can just throw in, PDFs of your presentations and spreadsheets or whatever it might be, just into all three and get it to output in a consistent format. Like you could just do that. And that could be a big unlock. And I think coming back to the agents point, I think not that it's mutually exclusive, but I think sometimes when we talk about, it's agents going to do everything. Yeah, but we haven't done even that bit of actually just helping people to
using it to that degree. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then not again, it's not mutually exclusive. You can kind of skip that bit to build those agents, but actually you still need that expertise. Like, for example, if we were to build an agent which would, collect all the data and to do the Slack update, you still need the expertise to say what it's meant to be, like what's important in a Slack update. So it's not just a bunch of AI slop that is like vaguely looking correct. That's like that. That's not the right way to do it. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of opportunity in that direction.
So to have a very narrow use case and then tell an LLM to do this or that with the data you throw in, right? Like, I don't know, rate all the CVs that I throw in for me, right? Like this is the criteria that is important for me. Works quite well, like stuff like that, like the little use cases. And I can imagine that this is also the reason why, like, I think many consultancies are having problems with really like finding big gigs in AI, because it's gradual, like many things are just like gradual improvements that basically save you a bit of time each day and make you more efficient, while not making you a superhuman straight away, or not, I don't know, replacing a workforce of 50 people straight away, and like just to come to the extreme McKinsey cases, let's say, and this makes it hard to earn money with it in a way.
Yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, and then I don't want to underplay the opportunities that are kind of in the bigger, more automated bucket. I think they're definitely there. So I think we could, with enough effort, probably build a lot more software that's LLM powered that could do that. But it's hard. Like that in terms of my portfolio, I could maybe do a couple of projects like these a year. That we just, and it's not necessarily that, okay, if I had 10 more engineers, I would do, I don't know, 5 of them. It's also like headspace and testing time and just making sure that we get it right time. So it's not necessarily just scalable in that kind of unlimited way. But these kinds of use cases also, kind of keeping them in mind, there's definitely, I think, massive amount of value that is still left on the table that we still don't, like, people don't really use those tools well enough. And that's why I had this initial skepticism about tools like Copilot-like tools. And I couldn't quite articulate why exactly. But the reason I'm personally skeptical, that I think I kind of crystallized it, is that point of that for certain things to work, if they're not very superficial, such as superficial example could be like, oh, just help me write this email better, which is like, okay, but whatever, who cares? Like it's only, like, arguably doesn't actually help. But if I want to say, I need to process these invoices and I need to output them in this way and I don't know, help me do this process. That is not a generic Copilot question. You actually need to embed quite a lot of expertise that is very, very hyper local to your use case, because I don't know, someone else set up a spreadsheet in this way. So you actually have to craft your context. You have to craft your prompt to make sure that it does actually work. And that's why I think whenever I haven't used the Microsoft tools that much, but kind of judging by rumors around adoption, it's probably true that people just don't really get enough value. And but for me, that's probably the reason, where it's you don't sit down and kind of craft precise context. You don't craft precise prompts. You don't embed your expertise in there to say, okay, this is how the flow should work. But if it's just generic, help me write the email better, it's like next to useless. That would be my assessment.
Yeah. So you also recently wrote a post on written content from or generating written content with LLMs, which was more not so. You weren't pushing people to do so, right?
Yeah. My basic point there was that I think people slide into that idea that because it looks good, because maybe, I don't know, it just sounds coherent, that it's better to just write with LLMs. But for me, it's not the best use of AI in that case. So quite often in my work, what I would do is, if I need to write something, and I write recreationally and also inside the organization. If I need to write something that I don't know maybe enough about, I would use LLMs to research like crazy. Like I would sometimes I was doing some work and collaborating on a bit of a paper, and the amount of O3 and O3 Pro I was using is insane. I had like 3, 4, 5, 10 windows in parallel, doing different bits of research, double checking, running same queries multiple times to just make sure I got the data correct, all of that. And then when it came to synthesizing that data and actually putting it together into something to share with people, I would still write it myself. Not because, I don't know, LLMs are better at writing or something, but that's the point here is that is my thinking that I need to put down on paper. Like if people are interested in LLMs saying, well, kind of providing the answer, they've also got ChatGPT. They could also do that. So the if the point is that they're asking you, then you should answer. And the reason why you still want to ask a human is that, there's a throat to choke. If you're saying some rubbish, then the person can come back to you and say, why are you telling me this rubbish? Like, that was wrong. So I think that there are things like that. There's the points around that the human would have way more context that goes way beyond any chat conversations. They would know some past experiences and strategy and wider information. So it's not necessarily that the person is smarter, but they would just have more awareness of what else is going on. And yeah, when people just go to LLM and say, just write me this, and it's just kind of, what's the point? You're just wasting everyone's time. Yeah, and I think there are obviously many scenarios when it's like a bit more reasonable to use it. Like, for example, I use it sometimes to write more directly if it's much more utilitarian kind of writing, where I've got these, I don't know, reports, and I just need to output a table with this information. Like that's fine. I've got no problem with that. It's just like regurgitating information, which is useful sometimes. But yeah, if you need to express your opinion, if you need to say what's in your head and put it down on paper, I think it's really a bad idea to use LLMs. And it's kind of going exactly against the point of like, why write at all?
So, I also had some recent moments when like someone sent me like a huge doc with, I don't know, IT compliance rules or whatever, where I thought like, hey, can you give me the prompt, please?
Exactly.
I'd like to see the prompt. Yeah. Give me the prompt. Let's rather version the prompt instead of this document, because this will change over time. But I'd like to see the prompt for it, because I want to see what your real thoughts are and what your real what the real workflow should be. In your like day-to-day, like, or in your setup at Moonpig, like, do you have anything that like really everyone is using? Like, I don't know, do you give everyone ChatGPT or Claude or whatever as like a gift? Do people have to pitch for it? Like, can everyone use whatever they want? And do you have some underlying tools like, I don't know, N8N or something like that like you really everyone can use and also people enjoy using, that you would recommend to every organization out there to be adopted?
The hardest part is the adoption. That's why I'm a little bit hesitant just giving access to a bunch of different tools, because we can definitely do it. It's not a problem. It's not even a cost problem. But then when we end up with tool here, tool there, it's really hard to make sure that people understand how to use it and so on. So, and it's kind of coming back to our conversation earlier about, people actually need to know and get a feel for it and so on. So the tools that we're using for general population is ChatGPT. And the way we've approached it was I think kind of interesting, that we basically did no marketing internally and no like forcing people to use it and no forcing people to adopt it. And the reason for that is that I kind of wanted to avoid this scenario where I just tell people to just like go use it and beating them over the head and saying, why you're not using ChatGPT and so on. So we just kind of left it open. If you want to have a license, you'll get it. We're not going to ask you like many questions. And we basically waited for people to come to us. And so we've got something like in kind of head office, I think we've got about 600 people, something like that, maybe 700 people. And we had, after the first Slack message, which is something like, hey, we've got ChatGPT, they want access, we probably had about like 130 signups like within a week, which I think is pretty good going, with like no extra follow-ups. Then now we're close to, I think, about 400. Again, not a single time I sent like a message to I don't know, everyone saying, why haven't you signed up yet, or anything like that. So it just happens naturally, and I think people like, oh, I actually need it to do my job. So I think that's I'm kind of semi-happy with how that's gone. I think there's still a lot left on the table in terms of the use of it. And it is difficult because there's definitely, like, when you run these sessions, engagement sessions or how-to sessions, you kind of get the same 20% of people show up to these things who are clearly more engaged. And I definitely want them to be engaged. That's great. But yeah, it's a bit harder when you go a bit further. Those people who signed up like a year after we've got the license, like, are they using it properly? I don't know. It's hard to kind of track that and know that for sure.
Maybe you should run surveys or something.
Yeah,
right?
no, we've tried, and then people tell you things. I don't know how you find it. Whenever I see these kinds of surveys, I don't know, by consultancies or things like that, where you kind of get these results, or 40% of executives thinks AI is a good idea, or something like that, or I don't know, 80% of companies use AI or something like that. And it's like there's something really fundamental is missing there, that I could, if I wanted to write a Moonpig promotional marketing memo, we could say, yes, 80% of the organization is using AI, weekly basis. And, we've got these 7 use cases which are automating workflows. And actually we built a bunch of agents, like all of that. But still, in terms of the potential use, if I was to sit down and go through every single process in the organization or even imagine all the things that we could do, I don't know, we're probably, to guess, 5-10% in terms of like what we could be doing in terms of just the processes, just the number of, I think, anytime I speak to a team, any team, and it could be from, I don't know, legal to product to, marketing, like we come up with like 5-7 things that they could just do tomorrow that they're not doing yet. There's just so much. So yeah, maybe 10% is even generous. So yeah, that's why we've got, I think, decent adoption. I think we've done a good enough, well, not good enough, I think it's okay job. But yeah, if I had the magic wand, we just sit everyone down, look at their processes for like a couple of weeks, stop everything else, and just like learn to do this properly. And we'll probably like 10x the usage straight away.
Yeah, maybe you should build like a boot camp or something.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm open to ideas. I'm definitely not saying that it's all been resolved. But it was interesting. I was in a different context. I was at House of Commons once in the UK, where there was an event where they were trying to understand how to educate and increase the use of AI in the UK. And I had many different areas of discussion, but one of them was just educating the public. And it was actually really hard to say what's the recommendation should be to like UK government, because it feels really uncomfortable to say that we should have some kind of national ChatGPT training program. It just sounds crazy to do this, because again, this comes back to the same point, like we we're discussing, like what do you actually teach people, right? Do you teach them how to write prompts? But then for what model? Because there's like new model comes out every few months, and then actually it's a bit different the way you approach it. So at even like national level, I have no idea like what the UK government should be doing, or any government, in terms of like adoption. I don't know. I think was it UAE, on one of the governments in the Middle East, where they just gave everyone license in their country, which is, I don't know, interesting.
Yeah, I also read that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe that will work. I don't know. That would be interesting to see. But although I don't know how that structure works. But one thing that I would definitely just hope happens at some point is that we're going to stop giving just access to these sloppy cheap bad models in like WhatsApp or something like that, and people get exposed to really bad models when they interact with AI, and then they think AI is rubbish because, they ask them and it's some 7B model saying something stupid, which I would also agree is rubbish. And people don't know. I wonder what's the population awareness about model like O3 or Gemini 2.5 or Claude 4. I don't know. What do you think? Do 5% of the population know about these models? Or tried it at all? I don't know. It feels like probably no, right?
Yeah, potentially no. It's a hard problem. Talking about the future a bit more, what is from your perspective, what's your vision for devs and CTOs or very technical people in the future? Like, will the workload quadruple? Will it I don't know? Will we be challenged by a lot of different people entering this space, or what do you think is happening? Will it become more competitive? Will there be like a big depression of human labor? What do you think?
Yeah, it's impossible to predict. And I'll probably look back at what I'm going to say now 6 months later, a year later, and it will be the most absurd answer. But I think there are some things in terms of, if you look at like software development, I think there are some things that will not change probably that much in terms of things like, what do you want to build? What's important to build? How do you architect it, design it, in a kind of bigger sense? I think these sorts of questions still need to be handled by humans, and even more so because once it becomes trivial to just generate code, it really becomes, it's pretty much the only job becomes like, what code do I actually want? Because if you have the magic wishes, then like you actually need to have the wishes. And I'll give you one example. I was testing Codex from OpenAI, the kind of cloud version where you just give it tasks and it does it. And I did 7 tickets in one evening, which was amazing. It was such a cool experience to do this. But apart from maybe an odd ticket here and there, I actually haven't done 7 tickets every evening because I don't have 7 tickets every evening. Like, I actually haven't got the ideas to like, what can I do well with it to like really move it forward. I could come up with like random tickets, but there's still things that I need to do. I need to speak to users. I need to look at the results. I need to think about like, is this going in the right direction? I need to like debug some stuff that is not like debuggable with AI. So there's still like these more important fundamental questions that I cannot see how they could change with AI. Even if we've got like AGI, I think you still need people who've got the intent to build it. I think that's one part of it. More mechanically, I think we will start shifting away from syntax and just the general kind of hands-on coding more and more. Not that it will go away completely, and for certain use cases, it will probably not go away at all. Like, it was interesting to hear, for example, like OpenAI researchers talk about how they trained GPT-4.5. They released a podcast like a few months ago, and they were just describing what kind of issues they were facing. And they didn't talk about this explicitly, but it was just trying to read between the lines, like, did they use LLMs for any of that? And I think the answer was like, no, it was 0% benefit to use LLMs for that. And I think there will still be cutting edge things that it's just, there's no way LLMs can like sort things out. But it's cutting edge is very, very tiny. So most of software is like, here's a bunch of boxes and forms, and we've just got some basic integrations. Like, that's most of software.
Yeah, and there are a lot of that, like week-long state machine building, etc. Might no longer take weeks, right?
Yeah.
Even though maybe, I don't know, you need the, like, you're not sure what to do with that mental capacity that frees up, but like, it might not take weeks anymore, which is positive.
Yeah.
Because complexity also, I mean, made it get to those weeks, right? It was easier years ago.
That's true. And I think in terms of capacity, it's very hard to predict like what labor market will do because there are many moving parts with that. But if we just take like my team on my own time, there is in no way that we have like started working less. Like this is a crazy idea that it's like, oh, because we use AI, it's like, oh, we like solve this ticket, so I guess we're taking afternoon off. Like that literally does not happen at all. So what we'll do instead is just move on to the next thing, and we want to build more stuff, and that's like what motivates us. And that's just, I think just the level of ambition that you have is much higher. I don't know how it manifests in the job market. It could be that we just have smaller teams that much more ambitious and can just do a lot more, and they just stay small and never grow. So that will be negative for the job market. But it could also be that each developer is much more productive. So actually it's worth having a lot more developers. So I could kind of see both of these extremes, but it's hard to know. But one thing that's for sure, that I don't know whether you had more interactions with the younger people who are starting to code now and go to university and things like that. And my experience was very limited, so I don't want to make some broad sweeping statements, but I'm a little bit worried that they don't seem to be like that switched on and that on board with like really properly, fully embracing LLMs for like coding and building stuff, not just using AI, but also AI applications. My impression, I don't know, my general assumption was that, young people always the ones just taking up the new technologies, just run with it. Yeah. And that may be true as like, I don't know, as they're just help and assistant. But I'm a little bit worried that, I don't know, maybe younger people, maybe it's our universities haven't like quite adopted for this, but I was speaking to someone at university and doing like technical degree, and they just like did no AI education. They had no projects that actually explicitly built with AI tools or actually building something that uses AI. And it was like, seemed to be only those with like agency to do projects on the side who do really well. And I do worry, and I have no like statistical basis for this, but I do worry that like an average person who goes through university just has like no basis to actually succeed and actually be one of those people who, I don't know, resolve 7 tickets in like a few hours. But which like that part kind of scares me more than, or they're just not going to be like junior developer jobs. So I don't know. I hope I'm wrong on that, but that worries me a bit.
I was hoping that it's the other way around, as you said. But maybe we should then build an AI university, right? Like an LLM university is starting today. Peter and Toby, that would be a good outcome.
No, I think the key question is like, what do you teach people? I think the only antidote, because things change so much, and the only antidote I know to this is just you have to constantly follow this stuff, which I feel like is a crazy requirement to give to people. Yeah. Like I do it because I really enjoy it, and that's my job. But I don't know, if I was an accountant or like a developer in, I don't know, non-AI company, like, is this a reasonable thing to ask? Like, probably not.
Yeah. It's hard. It's a hard ask. But lean back, enjoy the ride, and learn a lot.
Yes.
That's the request, right? So Peter, we slowly have to come to the end. While you were talking, like I was slowly or silently texting Codex, tasking Codex on a few tickets, and the task was actually to build a time machine. And it built some Python code. Like I never tried it out, but I tried it out on my computer now. Let's see if we have the chance to travel back in time when you were working for Lloyd's Banking Group in, I think, 2010 as a graduate, right? You were like sitting there building some dashboards, some analytics stuff, SQL, heavy lifting, and you now have the chance to whisper, like for 10 seconds, something into your younger self's ears, what would it be?
I would say that do the hardest technical thing, like early in your career, while you still can, because it's much harder to get paid high amounts of money to do hard technical things badly late in your career. And I think when you're early in your career, making bad software is acceptable, but later it becomes harder and harder, and the mechanics of your world setup is different. So yeah, early on, do the hard things while you can.
So for the ones who still do hard things, do them now.
Yes.
Thanks a lot, Peter. Very, very exciting podcast, very exciting episode. Thanks a lot for the chat and hope to see you soon in real life, maybe at a certain point when you return from 37 degrees France, where you are right now. Enjoy your vacation.
Oh, brilliant. Thanks a lot. Really enjoyed that conversation.
Thank you for listening to the AlphaList podcast. If you like this episode, share it with friends. I'm sure they love it too. Make sure to subscribe so you can hear deep insights into technical leadership and technology trends as they become available. Also, please tell us if there is a topic you would like to hear more about or a technical leader whose brain you would like us to pick. AlphaList is all about helping CTOs getting access to the insights they need to make the best decisions for their company. Please send us suggestions to cto@alphalist.com. Send me a message on LinkedIn or Twitter. After all, the more knowledge we bring to CTOs, the more growth we see in tech. Or, as we say on AlphaList, accumulated knowledge to accelerate growth. See you in the next episode.
Dieser Podcast wird produziert von Podstars bei OMR.